Welcome to Still In It, a 5-MeO DMT Journeys podcast, where I talk to real people about their 5-MeO experience. Our goal is to bring you honest and diverse perspectives about what this medicine is all about. I'm your host, Jessie, and I'm excited to have you along for the ride. So hop in and enjoy as we discuss what preparation, ceremony, and integration look like. This podcast is sponsored by Enfold, offering safe and sacred experiences in British Columbia. To learn more, visit enfold.org. That is enfold.org. Or click the link in the show notes. And now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the pod. We have a recurring guest who came twice now to Enfold and now twice to the pod. His name is Mehran. And I just want to say thank you for joining again.
Thank you, Jessie. Great to be back.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hop in and hear. Actually, I haven't heard about your experience yet, and this one's a little bit more fresh. Can you remind me when you had your second ceremony?
I want to say off the top of my head, just like 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, so we're still in it.
Still in it.
Yeah. Okay, what made you want to come back for a second ceremony or for a second time experiencing 5-MeO DMT through Enfold?
Well, I was on the wait list and I had asked in case, you guys had a cancellation that you would reach out to me, which you did. And so it came together quite spontaneously, but very synchronistically. And it just felt true. It just felt in alignment. It felt like this was the time to truly go back in, to remember my mission, my purpose, my path, who I am, my authentic being, that I just felt that I had disconnected from in some ways. And being an MDMA therapist, I felt that the work started to feel effortful rather than effortless. I wasn't operating, I feel, at 100%. And it just felt like I was tired, fatigued, in my head a lot, and back in patterns of overthinking, analyzing, and rumination that I recognized wasn't serving me. So this time, really, my intention was to let go of any stories, ideas, narratives, and trusting the process. Even in my preparation call with Steve, I fully trusted him in choosing the protocol, meaning the dosage, the mode of administration, and how much medicine I need, or how quickly to jump into the full embrace. And I just chose to really embrace uncertainty this time without any kind of idea of what it's going to entail.
Okay. For somebody who's never come to a retreat, would you kind of recommend not maybe inquiring about the dosing so much and more just trusting the intuition of Stephen Austin? Or do you think that's something that people should maybe bring up in their preparation calls?
Well, that's a good question. Depending on whether it's your first time or you've had experience before, it does seem to be a dynamic process with both people involved and both people feeling good about that. But in my case, because of the knowing that I tend to overthink and really don't know sometimes, I just wanted to trust that whatever dosage is determined will be okay with me, and just fully deciding to surrender into the process rather than needing to control it, which is or was, one of my patterns, and therefore just fully letting go of all of that.
Yeah. So was your intention letting go or?
Letting go. I think for the past 6 years, if you remember from our last conversation, ever since losing my father in such a unexpected, unjust, and tragic way, control had to very strongly come back online, because otherwise I wouldn't be safe, or how could I protect myself from having this happen again? And therefore always wanting to be kind of in hypervigilance or in threat detection mode, or needing to control myself, my emotions, my environment, even other people for that matter, so that this wouldn't happen again. And it gets exhausting when we choose control. It just feels incredibly hard to both be in connection with ourselves, but also with presence, if that makes sense, with the natural flow of the universe, because I'm either kind of caught up in the past or needing to protect from some unknown case scenario in the future that hasn't even happened yet and is very unlikely to happen for that matter. But it's just incredible the way trauma, I suppose, can live in the body or can make us believe a lie that simply isn't true.
Yeah, yeah. Um, do you mind sharing, I guess, a bit like what hypervigilance or control looks like in almost like a day-to-day manner? So for somebody who might be slightly aware that they do that, have more of a like an awareness, you know what I mean? Because like for
Yeah,
you, obviously, you're very self-aware.
so the metaphor that comes to mind is imagine that you're driving a car and you have one foot on the gas pedal and one foot on the brake simultaneously. So what is happening? We're using up an incredible amount of energy, but the car isn't moving forward or back. It's just like static still, and yet exhausting so much energy. So you feel incredibly tired and you're not even moving forward. You're not making any progress. Like there's no point, there's no use to all the thoughts or all the control that I thought I had. I mean, good luck wanting to control nature. Good luck trying to control the universe. So it just feels incredibly futile and incredibly exhausting. And the way I shared this with Steve was that perhaps I needed to get to recognize the futility of control or the futility of the mind in order to finally be able to transform, transcend, and move beyond the mind into these other realms of being.
How was it in the actual ceremony? Like, did you notice a difference in maybe how your body responded the first time versus how it responded the second time? Like, did it feel like you're almost like you mentioned trauma living in the body? Um, Often people who do suffer a lot of trauma might have a myofascial trauma release, which means that they're not moving a lot, but they're like shaking. And I'm always curious if like the first time they go, if they shake a lot, but then the second time they go, if their body changes or they're more expressive because they kind of let go of some of that. Was there any correlation there or
Well, so I was supposed to go to the ceremony room and have my session in the afternoon. In the morning, I wanted to do some breath work and some sauna and cold plunge, hot and cold therapy as a way to just kind of prep my nervous system and feel a little more grounded and regulated going in. What I noticed happening in the sauna, oddly enough, was that my body began to shake. And so it began to speak even before the actual medicine session itself, where I almost had like a mini ceremony in the sauna. It just came up and I just started to kind of breathe through it, allow it to occur, allow it to happen. And so by the time I actually went in to see Stephen Austin to do the ceremony, I oddly felt quite grounded. There was still a little bit of resistance, which at that point, Steve and Austin just do such an incredible job of just holding such incredible presence and regulation, where I would imagine that what is happening is that I just begin to tune into their energy and just feel calm and trusting and safe. And therefore, kind of leaning into the experience as Steve kind of leaned over, put a hand around me and said, "Brother, you got this." And that was all I needed to hear and essentially feel. And that's when they offered the first dose, and that was the high dose and the full embrace.
the first dose they went straight into high dose with you?
They did,
No
yes.
way. Okay,
And I
cool.
trusted Steve. I trusted the process. And even in our preparation call, he mentioned that that is what he would suggest. It actually
Wow.
felt incredibly liberating and freeing, once you can just kind of give that, uh, to the universe, or in this case, Steve, who was representing the universe.
How did it feel like going back into that space from your first time and then going back there, high dose right
Steve
away?
had also shared, I forgot to mention that being my second experience, that it may not be the same as the last time, that it can be different as it tends to be for every person every time. And a part of me felt that, okay, like it's going to be difficult or challenging, or I'm going to be kicking and screaming, or there's going to be a lot of resistance, or at some points in time, I had thought about that possibility and potential. But once the medicine kicks in, first of all, and the high dose, it's very hard to resist, meaning that within the countdown 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, by the time I was at 5, like I'm gone. And immediately the mind loses grip, and it's incredibly hard to control. And I was just immediately back into the 5-MeO space, which is impossible to put into words. But if I had to, this blinding white light of pure possibility, joy, euphoria, ecstasy, and love is what washed over me. And what happened this time, which I don't know if I shared last time, happened was that everything I had gone through until that very second, that very moment, including the suffering, including the incredible suffering of having to lose my father the way I did, for having that had to happen to our family the way it did, for us to have to rehome and leave Iran, and leave everything that was familiar and known to us, and enter a completely different world of unknowns, uncertainty, and recognizing that all of that suffering became grace, became like a gateway to now being able to feel the incredible euphoria and ecstasy and love, meaning that they both live on the flip side of the same coin, that one is what allows the other, which is impossible for the mind to grasp, that is stuck in duality and in separation, or in light or shadow, good or bad, or the rational mind that kept asking, why me? Why us? Why did this have to happen the way it did? The suffering is actually what was the prerequisite to feeling this impossible love. And it just boggles the mind. I mean, I hope I'm doing it justice, but where if someone had come to me 6 years ago and said that your dad's death was a gift, I would want to slap them or say, fuck you. Like, what do you mean? But to have that 6 years later, with the help of Steve Austin Enfold and the medicine, come to me that yes, that too was a gift. Like that jump or that leap or going from that place to here is nothing but a miracle. And I know that's a strong word to use, but to be able to break out of the illusion of separation, the illusion of victimhood, the illusion that the universe is somehow against me, the illusion of it's all madness and chaos and it makes no sense, there's no meaning to it all. But coming into this space of like, no, this was exactly part of your path. Everything happened exactly the way it needed to. You are exactly where you need to be. And this suffering is truly grace. When I would hear this from Ram Dass, one of my teachers, that suffering is grace, I was like, yeah, I kind of get that. That sounds nice, and I'm sure it's true for others, but not for me. But to truly experientially, with the help of the medicine, to feel that in the depth of your bones and the depth of your soul, that suffering is this enigma that has existed for so long, that has essentially weaves into love. It's no longer separate. They're one and the same. And so coming out of the experience, which in this world lasted 15, 20 minutes, the only word that I was left with was love, 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 love.
That was so beautiful. I have so many things I want to dissect there. Um, I guess I'll start off with, you mentioned grief, like why us. I'm wondering if you could allude a little bit more to anyone who's going through grief and feeling this, whether it's through a loss or whatnot has happened to them, just like what has helped you in the past 6 years outside of even just 5-MeO DMT be able to like begin to process all that? Because grief is something that we're all going to feel on various levels throughout our life, and it's very challenging for some people to be able to look at it like a gift.
Absolutely. The phrase that comes to mind is to honor both your humanity and your divinity, as Ram Dass would say. And in fact, I just spoke with Steve about this on our integration call as well, where it's important not to bypass the stuff of life or our humanity, or as you're mentioning, our grief. One cannot deny, reject, project, or essentially bypass that thing, but rather, how can we move through it to be able to process, transform, transcend, and let go by truly honoring the depth of it, meaning the incredible anger, rage, sadness, pain, hurt, and everything that comes along with it, that will eventually, I hope, down the line, downstream, eventually recognize as a gift, rather than the victim consciousness, which is why me, that we can get stuck into for the rest of our lives, for that matter. And that can lead down a totally different path, which I'm so happy that I broke free from.
With that, do you mean like not being present with the emotions instead of trying to like repress those emotions? Because I think sometimes like when we have negative emotions, they come up through whatever event, we almost shame ourselves or like double down on ourselves, like which makes it even harder.
Well, even to speak to your language, Jesse, with respect and love, even using the phrase negative emotions, like it's interesting how we even associate the word negative with certain
Mm.
emotions, like anger, for example, which was exactly what I did, rather than welcoming each and every one of these emotions, regardless of any kind of label we assign to them, and just allowing them, yes, to acknowledge them, to welcome them, to honor them, to hold them, um, to all they want is to be seen. Just like us humans, all our emotions want is to be acknowledged, seen, and loved. And that's exactly the process where 5-MeO DMT was kind of the ultimate medicine that allowed everything to be reconciled.
You mentioned the illusion of separation and victimhood, and also something about the universe meaning nothing at all and kind of like surpassing all that, where it's all meant to be like it's all perfectly part of the plan. May I ask maybe like what is your belief system in regards to all of that? And because a lot of people do have this existential feeling that life is inherently meaningless, and in a way that's a beautiful thing, but it sounds like you've almost like evolved from that thought.
The help of these medicines, it can be 5-MeO, it can be potentially NN-DMT, it can be ayahuasca. I would imagine it can happen with higher doses of psilocybin and even MDMA and the synthetics like 3-MMC or ketamine as well. But ultimately, that you are nothing, you are absolutely nothing. So, meaning from a psychological personality identity perspective, an ego perspective, you are nothing, and that's really hard to hear from for a lot of people. What do you mean I'm nothing? I have a work, a family, a job, a career, a status, these accolades, my titles, all of that. No, 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 none of that matters from one level. And at the same level, you are absolutely everything. So to be able to reach a point where you can reconcile and hold both of those realities simultaneously, that's where true freedom lies. That you recognize that there is meaningless, but also meaning. There is light, but also shadow. There is nothing and there is everything. And this is what these medicines reveal. And I know it's hard for people intellectually to reconcile that. And this is why, unless you don't try, you don't know. And unless you don't enter these spaces, you won't get to experientially, not intellectually, feel into these realities that were previously unavailable to us.
I wonder if that now will, that profoundness and that feeling kind of shift something in your brain or something, where now do you feel like on a deeper level or on a day-to-day level that you're able to access that and like you're able to understand it better and therefore like live better, and without that you probably would never have been able to like harness onto that feeling? Am I making sense
Yes.
there.
I think for me, the experience of five anchored that knowing so deeply in my body, nervous system, and soul that it's almost impossible to forget, no matter how hard the mind tries to fool me otherwise. And of course, this is where integration comes in, where the practices, the daily routines, and anything that can aid in the remembrance would be incredible to have as part of our daily lives without it being a should or an expectation or being hard on ourselves. For me, it's something as simple as walking in nature with my dogs, or just from time to time reminding myself to come back to the breath, to find that stillness once again. It's not in the content of life. It's not in the doing of life that we tap in, but rather when we quiet down enough to listen, when we incorporate tools like sauna, cold plunge, breath work, nature, music, dancing, movement, anything that quiets down the mind, that allows us to tap back into the deeper part of our knowing, which is our bodies, our guts, our intuition, that stillness that I speak about. That is where the remembering lives. Like home is not a physical, New York, LA, Tehran, wherever, but home, when you close your eyes, is that deep anchor, that deep knowingness, and that deep sense of peace and stillness on the inside. And once we anchor to that part of ourselves from that place, everything becomes possible, everything becomes effortless, everything becomes so much more beautiful, because I'm no longer in the past, in the future, in rumination and anxiety, which is kind of projecting forward, worrying about a worst case scenario that hasn't happened yet, in all of these different places that our senses can get engaged with, but rather just tuning back in, closing our eyes, breathing, finding that anchor. And that then becomes the foundation from which my minute, hour, and day presents itself. I recognize that I'm speaking a little bit vague or nebulous, but I hope that this is resonating.
No, it's definitely resonating with me, especially as I go through like a very big like transition phase in my life and like change, where it's like, oh, home is like, it's been something of like practice of like understanding that like, yeah, home is internal, and to like cue into like the subtleties and to remember that like this is just like an experience. Like it's funny because you mentioned remember, and I don't know if they still do it, but they give pens out that say remember on it at Enfold. Yeah. And I
Yes.
know, and before I was always like, why? This is so like corny in a way. But now as you say it, I'm like, oh my god, it all makes sense. But I also don't think I had such a profound experience as like you had on your 5-MeO journeys, where you've tapped into something and it's clear, like you're glowing, it's coming from internally. Um, and you
And I
mentioned, oh
wonder,
yeah, go ahead.
Jesse, I'm curious to know what helps you remember? What helps you remember your experience? What are the things that have helped you kind of tap back into that space and that place?
For me, my biggest takeaway from my ceremony was just like, oh, this is a gift. Like this whole human experience, all the pain, all the pleasant, the joy, whatever. It's all an experience and it's a sensation, and I can tap into it if I want to be present with it. Whereas, like when I die or before I was born, it was like absolutely nothing. So it's like this is something for me to continue to sense into, especially into like my body, which I never realized I wasn't living in. And you did mention like even just bring your dogs for a walk. I was walking a dog the other day and I just remember feeling like rushed, like, come on, we just need to like get this walk in and out. And being like, wait, no, this is like a moment here. Like I can either choose to like be like rushing through this walk, or I can still take the same amount of time and just like notice the trees, notice the dog smelling a flower that I normally would have just been like, didn't even see. So that helps me kind of come back to my body, if that.
And I like that word to choose that you mentioned, because truly there is choice, even when we feel that there is none.
Yeah. Yeah, everything is a choice. Yeah, that is very true. um, yeah, and you did say about integration, and I was just going to ask, like, is there anything different you're doing this time for integration? Like, what does integration look like for you as you're presently even just like working in it?
I'm still a little messy. I'm still drinking coffee, and feel I can be doing a little bit better with my sleep, with my diet, with my movement, which I feel are the three basics, the three pillars. Truly, nothing can inform our mental health, our overall well-being than just following the basics of eating well, sleeping well, and moving, I suppose. And so I feel that I'm just feeling a little bit less rushed. I'm less impatient. I am less irritable. I am more present in conversation or with other humans. I think Steve also pointed out to me, because as I may have also in our podcast, closed my eyes at times, which is a way for me to um, in some ways tune out of the present moment or the person right in front of me, or the connection that me and you share right now. And so these little things that I would do to kind of step away from the present moment, or get anxious or worried or already think about the next thing I need to do, but really just honoring exactly where I am and just kind of, okay, now this, oh, now this, now this, and just like kind of one step at a time, rather than needing to like jump to the peak of this mountain I've created in my mind, which is impossible to get to.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I feel like a lot of people can resonate with that. It is about being like honoring where you are at this time. It's so easy to like wish to be at a different point in your life. Like, okay, like in the future I'll be here and then I can like settle in. And it's been a lesson as I age. It's just like even if I reach that point, it's never enough. So it's like I should just start to like just accept where I'm at, whether that's like in whatever domain of my life, right? So that is fairly beautiful. And I think you're doing great. It's okay if you're drinking coffee. I know Steve and Austin are off the caffeine, but I think coffee's great with moderation.
Yeah. I had like a slight guilt arise, but then the guilt is welcome too, to be seen, acknowledged, felt, and heard, and then I'll still drink my coffee.
Yeah, yeah. Not everybody gets off caffeine, and I don't think that like it's necessarily a bad thing. I think there's different viewpoints out there. But I agree, though. You mentioned sleep, exercise, and what was the last thing that are the three pillars?
And so sleep, eating well, and
Oh,
movement.
eating well. Yes, yes. 100% I agree. It's like if I dial those in, I just feel like a completely different person, more present, and more like energy, I guess, in a way,
Yeah.
to show up for whatever may be present. So,
Yeah, because we probably all heard this, on an Andrew Huberman podcast or somewhere, that the body can override the mind, meaning that anytime you feel that you get caught up in the thoughts, the negative thought loop and rumination and overthinking, remember, if possible, to just break out of all of that by moving, or by going into a cold shower, or if you have the luxury of having access to a cold plunge, or floating in a sensory deprivation tank, or spending a bit of time in nature, or just going out for a walk, whatever tuning back into the body practice that we have will help quiet down the mind. And it's really very simple. It doesn't have to be hard. None of this has to be hard. None of this needs to feel like a to-do list. None of this has to feel like, oh, well, you're rich and, have access to these things and I don't. No, 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 no. Like everything I'm speaking to, most of the things I'm speaking to truly can be incredibly accessible, available to many of us, which includes, going back to our breath, which includes just closing our eyes, incorporating mindfulness, just kind of hanging out with our bodies for 5 minutes in the morning or at night, or tuning into a nice, calm, musical, piece, classical piece, or whatever it might be, going for a walk. All of these things don't have to be hard, don't have to be, a power yoga class, I don't know, that, is expensive or whatever. It doesn't have to be that.
100%. I want to also give you the opportunity, if you feel comfortable, to maybe share a little bit about your practice and how people may find you or how you may work with clients.
Absolutely.
Because I find what you say very beneficial, and I feel like that might be
Thank
helpful for
you.
some
Thank
people.
you. Thank you. So, my private practice is mind body integration. I currently work with MDMA and 3MMC, and I just help folks, couples, and groups processing trauma, processing, uh, whatever issue, diagnosis, and dare I say, story negative. Um, or potentially even victim consciousness that they're stuck in and they can't quite break free from. MDMA is a medicine that allows us to really tune in, reconnect, and be with our bodies while the mind just kind of takes a moment of absence or a leave of absence, while we truly get to feel into what it is I'm feeling in my body, in sensation, rather than in the repetitive, ruminating, futile thought loops that we can get trapped in or stuck in. So we offer retreats. I work one on one. I work with couples, and I feel that it's kind of like therapy plus or therapy amplified. So there definitely is a process where the people I work with get to share their experience, culture, context, background, traumas that they may have experienced in life. But I also incorporate a somatic aspect, a nervous system aspect, a regulation aspect, a safety aspect. So by the time we actually ingest the medicine, we can be in a pretty regulated, still, and safe space. So then we can fully kind of surrender into the experience. And it can be incredibly effortless, it can be incredibly easy, and it can be incredibly beautiful. Healing does not have to be hard. I know that a lot of the things that I'm saying are quite controversial, but that's another illusion. It's another lie that, healing is supposed to be hard or it's supposed to be work. That's just another thing that at some point we believed. And for what reason? Like, who said so? Like, why? Like, put a question mark on most of the things you think you know or believe. Like, always ask. And I'm so happy that I've always had this skeptic in me, this questioner. Wait, is that true? And I would question it until it felt true in my body, in my gut, in my intuition, in my nervous system. That's where truth lives, not necessarily in the mind.
That's beautiful, and I totally agree. And I think like MDMA and 3MMC could be both beneficial for, I guess, a stepping stone into psychedelics and addressing certain things that maybe like people are at a standstill with in talk therapy, or even if you're like a seasoned psychedelic psychonaut.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse, to be honest, like some people come to work with me even after having had a five experience because some people may also call it like an integration medicine. As part of your integration practice, it can be a beautiful medicine to help kind of reconcile and bring together some of the downloads and some of the insights and a lot of the things that came up during a five or an ayahuasca experience, for example, to help integrate that more fully, more wholly, more safely. And so it is definitely an option both pre and post, other medicines as well.
100%. I almost think my 3MMC ceremony was more profound than my 5-MeO. Not that like 5-MeO wasn't, but I think maybe it was the 5-MeO that allowed me to have a profound 3MMC a year later. But I totally like respect any practitioner who does work with these two medicines because I think they are also just like very friendly. Like I don't know, it's just a very beautiful experience to have and to tap into, feeling like the lack of shame that comes up, or just like the truth serum, like you mentioned, just like feeling very at ease with yourself and whatever may arise, which is so scary sometimes to even have those like other thoughts come up, and to feel it without the negative emotions is like a blessing.
Yeah, because usually that fear or resistance is what's blocking us from going there, so to speak. And so
Mm-hmm.
MDMA and 3MMC, I don't know the exact scientific reason for it, but from what I understand, it quiets down the fear center or the amygdala, meaning that we're able to be with what we consider negative or scary or fearful, or have, a story associated with it, that this is somehow bad, awful, dangerous, not good, or not safe, allows us to be with it without having that fear arise. So we can finally see it through a clear lens without all that additional baggage, so to speak. And when we see it, we actually realize that it's not as scary as we once thought.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Is there any last things that you would like to say on the pod before we wrap up?
I mean, not really. I mean, I'm just in awe of the depth of simplicity, of ease, of access to presence and my body, my emotions, my breath, which just brings me to an incredible gratitude to Enfold once again for having extended this invitation and opportunity. And just to Stephen Austin, all of you, for the incredible work you do and the spaces you create, which is really like, I haven't heard of anywhere else, to have a container, to spend that much time to truly honor the before, during, and after, because this is not something that I personally would recommend that one person does prematurely in a rushed way with someone they don't necessarily know or trust. And so if you truly care about safety and doing this experience in a place, in a container that is helping with that, then and I can wholeheartedly recommend Enfold as a place to experience this incredibly potent, powerful, beautiful, mystical medicine.
Oh, we so appreciate you saying that. That is obviously completely aligned with how we feel about 5-MeO DMT. Like, while it may be metabolized in your body after like 3 hours and you're technically sober, it's such a profound experience, and it's not just like a one-off experience. It's like an entire process that unravels, as with any high dose psychedelic as well. So to hear that being reaffirmed is wonderful. Thank you.
You are most welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for coming onto the pod again.
Amazing. Glad to be back. I hope this helps someone out there.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Still In It podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're interested in hearing more, the best thing you could do is to leave us a review. This allows us to continue to record and inform others on the 5-MeO experience. If you want to join our beloved community or learn more about us, feel free to visit us at enfold.org. That is enfold.org.